There is a type of person you almost never see online, not because they don't exist, but because they refuse to turn their life into evidence. They don't post their thoughts. They don't archive their happiness. They don't announce their pain. And in a world where visibility is mistaken for value, that silence feels suspicious. People ask, what are they hiding? But the real question is, what are they protecting? Because not using social media is rarely about disinterest. It's about psychology. It's about a nervous system that learns something most people haven't. That constant exposure fractures the self. That being watched changes how you feel. That attention can quietly become a form of pressure. These people didn't disappear. They stepped back from comparison, from performance, from living with an invisible audience in their head. And once you understand why they did that, you stop seeing them as disconnected. You start realizing something more unsettling. Maybe they're not behind the world. Maybe they're ahead of it. They move through rooms quietly, not because they are invisible, but because they have learned. Long before memory formed, that presence does not require performance. Some call them distant, others call them shy. Some say they lack connection, but the truth is subtler. People who rarely socialize are not missing something. They are protecting something: their attention, their coherence, their nervous systems, their fragile interior focus. In a culture that measures worth by visibility, their absence feels suspicious. But for them, social noise is not nourishment. It is distraction. It fragments the mind. It pulls attention outward. It disorients internal rhythm. They are not antisocial. They are intraconscious, because every human being carries two worlds: the outer world of interaction and the inner world of experience. Most people inhabit the first and hope for the second. They speak first, think later. Or think in public, not in private. But some souls learned early that sustaining both worlds simultaneously creates strain, not stability. They discovered, as sometimes painfully, that attention is not renewable in endless supply, that giving presence to too many lights, screens, voices, expectations leaves little left for the subtle symphony of self. For them, quiet is not emptiness, it is containment. It is a boundary, unspoken yet firm. It says, my nervous system has limits. My emotional energy is finite. My attention is sacred. This pattern often begins in early life, not always through trauma, but through response patterns that shape the nervous system. A child who learned to read rooms before speaking. A young person who anticipated the emotional weather of others before learning what they needed themselves. An observer who noticed tension without being talked to. These early experiences do not make one cold. They make one precise, pre-attuned, responsive to nuance. And when these individuals grow up, they carry that early tuning forward. A crowded space becomes draining rather than energizing. Rapid conversation feels like noise. Small talk feels like repetition without resonance. Exposure to emotional intensity feels unsafe because in early life, support may have been inconsistent or overwhelming. So they withdraw, not in fear, but in self-preservation. They do not avoid humanity. They avoid fragmentation. They do not reject connection. They reject overexposure. People who rarely socialize are often deeply relational, but in a way that is slow, layered, and rich. They prefer depth over breadth, a long, authentic conversation over 100 fleeting interactions. They value tone, timing, and silence. They can feel micro-expressions that evade others. Subtle shifts in energy, unsaid meanings. Online interaction flattens these experiences. Screens reduce nuance to captions and emojis. What is complex becomes compressed. And for someone whose nervous system evolved to detect subtlety, this flattening feels like loss, not connection. So they choose fewer connections, but real ones. Real connection is not measured by frequency. It is measured by reciprocity of presence. They do not confuse access with intimacy. They know that visibility can create illusion without depth and performance without authenticity. When they opt out of constant social engagement, people often misunderstand them. Oh, why are you so private? Oh, why don't you post? Oh, what are you hiding? But privacy is not secrecy. Privacy is containment. It is saying not everything meaningful needs an audience. Not every emotion needs explanation. Not every experience benefits from exposure. In quiet, they find clarity. In stillness, they find coherence. In solitude, they find self-narrative that is not crowdsourced. Their identity is built inward, not outward. They do not rely on external validation. Their self-worth does not rise and fall with likes or comments. They do not seek affirmation in numbers. They seek it in resonance. This does not mean they are immune to loneliness. In fact, many of them feel loneliness deeply, but their loneliness is honest, not numbed by constant stimulation, not disguised by curated presence, not diluted by distraction. And honesty, even when uncomfortable, builds integrity. They feel more than they perform. They perceive rather than react. Their nervous systems are not being hijacked by comparison loops, but guided by inner signals. When they sit with others, they listen, not to reply, but to understand. They pause before speaking. They do not rush to shape impressions. They do not edit themselves for consumption. This is why conversations with them feel different. They are spacious. They breathe. They hold silence, not as absence, but as presence. Their absence from social spectacle is not rejection. It is discrimination of attention. They choose where to place their gaze, not because they are uninterested, but because they are intentionally discerning. They do not reject technology. They reject excessive exposure. They reject identity built on feedback loops. They reject a system that rewards visibility over integrity. And yes, this choice often comes with cost. They miss casual updates, group narratives, and the illusion of being everywhere at once. They are assumed to be unreachable, uninterested, unavailable. But inside them, a quiet truth remains. Peace became more valuable than presence. Presence more valuable than performance, and alignment more valuable than approval. They do not disappear. They simply choose to live where their mind can stay intact, closer to themselves, less distracted by who they should be, more anchored in who they are. They show up not optimized, not curated, but present. Slow, steady, whole. And in a world obsessed with being seen, that may be the most psychologically grounded decision of all.